The Ardennes Forest, Belgium, December 20, 1944. Dawn is a gray, slow seep through the dense, snow-laden pines. The air is biting still, and carries the distant, muffled thump of artillery in a foxhole overlooking a shallow valley. A young American soldier from the 2nd Infantry Division carefully raises his head. Above the frozen parapet, the crack of the rifle is startlingly loud, a single whip-like report that echoes through the silent woods. The soldier slumps, a dark red bloom spreading across his parka. There is no visible enemy, no muzzle flash, no movement. Only the sigh of the wind through the branches. For the men on the line, the forest itself has become the enemy. Every shadow, every shattered stump, every ruined farmhouse could conceal a specter with a rifle, a German sniper, a sharpshooter he is not part of. A grand offensive or a sweeping armored thrust. His war is intimate, personal, and psychological. He operates in a realm of pure isolation, believing in his skill, his camouflage, and the terror he sows. He feels in these frozen woods untouchable, but in the American ranks, a new kind of soldier is watching. He does not carry a sniper rifle. He carries a telescope, a map, and a relentless, analytical patience. The duel for the soul of the battlefield is about to begin, not between two riflemen, but between a hunter and a new breed of scientific hunter-killer, the U.S. Army spotter team. This is the story of that unseen front. The stage is set in the brutal, close-quarters combat of the European theaters later. Stages where the German sniper had perfected his craft into an art of terror, yet his reign of psychological dominance was challenged not by a superior rifle, but by a superior system, a methodical, technological, and tactical counter-revolution born of American ingenuity and industrial-scale warfare. The unseen would be seen, the hidden would be found, and the untouchable would be brought down, one calculated grid coordinate at a time. To understand the dread instilled by the German sniper of late 1944 and 1945, one must first go back to the origins and evolution of German sniping doctrine. Unlike the Allies, who largely disbanded dedicated sniper programs after World War I, Germany never lost faith in the precision marksman. The Weimar-era Reichswehr secretly maintained sniper training, often under the guise of police marksmanship. This institutional knowledge was inherited and vastly expanded by the Wehrmacht, following the experiences of the First World War's brutal stalemate. German tactical theory, Auftragstaktik, mission-type tactics, emphasized decentralization, initiative, and the value of the individual expert. The sniper fit this doctrine perfectly. The invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941, Operation Barbarossa, became the sniper's brutal crucible. On the vast, open steppes and in the shattered cities, the Red Army deployed snipers in unprecedented numbers, most infamously at Stalingrad. The Germans were shocked by their effectiveness and suffered grievous losses to them. This hard lesson was learned. German sniping was no longer a peripheral skill, but a vital defensive and delaying tactic. Training schools like the one at Zossen were formalized. Curriculum was rigorous: fieldcraft, camouflage, stalking, range estimation, and most importantly, the psychology of inducing fear. A German sniper was taught he was not just killing enemy soldiers, he was crippling unit morale, paralyzing movement, and draining the offensive spirit of entire companies. By 1943, with the tide of war turning against Germany after defeats at Stalingrad and Kursk, the sniper's role evolved again. He became a key component of the defense in depth, a force multiplier for outnumbered German units struggling to hold the collapsing Eastern and, later, Western front. When the Allies stormed ashore at Normandy in June 1944, they entered a battlefield perfectly suited to the German sniper. The bocage country of Normandy was a nightmarish quilt of small, sunken lanes, dense hedgerows, and isolated stone farmhouses. Every field was a potential killing zone, every hedge a possible firing position. The close-range, confused nature of the fighting neutralized Allied advantages in artillery and air power. Here, the German sniper, often operating alone or in pairs, was devastatingly effective. He would target officers, radio men, and machine gun crews, then vanish into the labyrinth. American and British troops reported a pervasive nerve shredding anxiety. Movement during daylight became hazardous. The crack of a single rifle could halt an entire advance for hours. The sniper wielded a psychological impact far beyond his numerical strength, fostering a belief among many German marksmen that in their chosen terrain, against a foe reliant on mass and momentum, they were indeed untouchable ghosts of the hedgerow. This sense of invulnerability was rooted in both superior equipment and meticulous training. The primary German sniper rifle was the Karabiner 98K, a bolt-action Mauser, often fitted with high-quality optics like the Zeiss ZF-39 or ZF-41 scopes, while the Allied Lee-Enfield No-4T and the M1903A4 Springfield were excellent weapons. German optics were frequently judged superior in clarity and light gathering, crucial for dawn and dusk engagements. More important than the rifle, however, was the doctrine. German sniper was an artist of concealment. He would construct elaborate sniper nests using natural materials, sometimes spending days in position. He was taught patience to let reconnaissance elements pass and wait for higher-value targets. He mastered the use of loopholes, shadows, and background to mask his position. His greatest weapon was the Allied soldier's imagination, turning every window, every pile of rubble into a potential threat. By the time Allied forces broke out of Normandy and began the pursuit across France, the German sniper had cemented his reputation as a harbinger of sudden, anonymous death. But the nature of the war was changing, and the open pursuit was giving way to a new, grim phase, the fortified, desperate defense of the German frontier. It was here, in the Huachen forest and the snowbound Ardennes, that the American army would be forced to develop a systematic answer to this spectral threat. The Allied advance stalled in the autumn rains of 1944, faced with the formidable barriers of the Siegfried Line and the dense, dark expanse of the Huachen forest. This was not the bocage. This was a primeval, soggy nightmare of thick fir trees, deep ravines, and limited visibility. The German defense, now consisting of hardened veterans and fanatical Volksgrenadiers, employed snipers as integral parts of a deadly interlocking defense. They were wired into strongpoints, covering minefields and machine gun nests. The U.S. Army's initial response was reactive and costly, using massed machine gun fire or mortar barrages on suspected positions, or sending out desperate, angry patrols to flush them out, tactics that wasted ammunition and lives. A more elegant, more scientific solution was needed. The stage was set for a fundamental shift in the close quarters battle, moving from brute force to precision counter-targeting. The era of the spotter was about to dawn. The U.S. Army entered World War II with no formal sniper program. The concept of the dedicated military marksman had languished in the interwar period, seen as a relic of trench warfare. Initial attempts to field sniper rifles, like the M1903A4 and later the M1C Garand, were ad hoc and training was minimal. The individual American rifleman was trained for volume of fire, the mad-minute concept, not for surgical precision. This doctrinal gap became a bloody vulnerability in the close confines of Normandy and the Huachen. The American soldier felt outmatched in this intimate duel. He had artillery and air power, but these were blunt instruments against a single, hidden man. The psychological toll was immense. Letters and after-action reports speak of a constant, grinding fear of men refusing to move, of a deep-seated hatred for an enemy they could not see. The German sniper wasn't just an opponent. He was a phantom that stole the initiative and morale from entire units. The solution did not initially come from a new rifle or a cloned German training manual. It emerged from the existing structure of the U.S. Army, specifically from the fields of artillery and military intelligence. The key lay in the concept of observation, artillery Forward observers were trained to pinpoint targets using maps, compasses, and binoculars. Intelligence personnel were trained to piece together patterns from disparate clues. The U.S. Army began to fuse these skills into a new frontline asset, the dedicated sniper and spotter team, while the U.S. eventually established sniper schools. In Europe, the true innovation was the formalization of the two-man team, 1-2. Shoot, 1 to observe. The observer or spotter was the brains of the operation. He was equipped with high-powered optical gear, most notably the M4920X spotting scope, tripod-mounted telescope of exceptional clarity and magnification. His tools were not just optical, they were analytical, detailed maps, range cards, and a logbook. The spotter's mission was fundamentally different from the sniper's. The sniper sought a target, the spotter sought the absence of the normal, the flaw in the landscape. He was hunting for the hunter. He would establish a concealed observation post often in a second-story window, a church tower, or a dugout position with a panoramic view of the suspected enemy line, and then he would watch for hours. He would memorize the terrain, the pattern of shadows at different times of day, the normal civilian traffic in a distant village, the layout of a hedge line. He was building a baseline of nothing. Any deviation from this baseline, a fleeting glint of light, a single branch that moved against the wind, the sudden flight of birds from a specific thicket, the faintest wisp of breath on a cold morning was a potential signature. The German sniper, for all his skill, had to see to shoot. He had to expose his optic to light or create a firing port. In that moment, he betrayed his position not to the naked eye, but to the patient, systematic gaze of the spotter and his magnified optics. This systematic approach transformed the counter-sniper battle from a reactive, emotional struggle into a cold, technical process. It was a battle of optics and intellect versus camouflage and patience. The U.S. teams often operated from a position of relative safety, far behind their own front lines, using the superior reach of their scopes. They communicated with frontline units via field telephone or radio, not to call for wasteful barrage, but to guide a single, precise shot from their own sniper, or to direct the fire of a .50 caliber M2 Browning machine gun, a weapon whose heavy round could punch through the brick and timber that protected a German marksman. The spotter team turned the sniper's greatest strength, his invisibility, into a vulnerability. To remain effective, the German sniper had to reveal himself, however slightly, and in the crosshairs of the M49 spotting scope, that slight reveal was a death sentence. The untouchable phantom was now being methodically catalogued, plotted, and eliminated. This was the new reality that would come to a head in the frozen hell of the Battle of the Bulge, where the confident German sniper met the analytical American spotter in a final, definitive duel for dominance of the battlefield's shadows. The stage is now set for the intricate duel. We have seen the German sniper, a product of deep doctrine and harsh experience, reigning supreme in the close terrain. We have seen the American response begin to coalesce, not around a lone hero, but around system of observation and precision. To fully grasp the dynamics of this hidden war, we must examine it from multiple perspectives, through the eyes of the hunter, the scientist, the commander, and the terrified infantryman caught between them. He is alone. For the German Scharfschütze in the autumn of 1944, the war has contracted to a circle of earth perhaps 1 meter in diameter. His world is defined by the field of view through his ZF-39 scope, the feel of the cold stock against his cheek, and the immense, crushing weight of patience. He is often a veteran of the Eastern Front, where he learned that survival depended on absolute stillness, perfect camouflage, and emotional detachment. His training taught him to think in terms of ballistic curves, windage, and minute of angle, but also in terms of psychology. He knows the value of his first shot is not necessarily in the kill, but in the chaos it sows. He may let a patrol pass waiting for the medic who inevitably comes forward, or the officer who moves to reorganize the men. By targeting leaders and communicators, he doesn't just remove individuals, he severs the nervous system of a platoon. His position is a masterpiece of fieldcraft. He uses a Schützenloch, a sniper's hole, camouflaged with local vegetation, or a nest in a ruined building, accessed from a hidden route and featuring a carefully constructed firing port that masks muzzle flash. He feels a profound sense of superiority, born of skill and the tangible fear he projects. In letters and captured diaries, many expressed this feeling of being an unseen arbiter of death, a predator in a landscape of prey. This psychological armor, this belief in his own near-invulnerability, was as crucial to his effectiveness as his Mauser rifle. His war is conducted in silence and stillness, but his mind is relentlessly active. The U.S. Army spotter, often paired with a sniper, but sometimes operating as the lead in a counter-sniper team, is a technician of perception, where the German sniper is an artist. The spotter is a scientist. His weapon is the M49 20-power spotting scope, a 45-pound instrument of crystal-clear optics mounted on a heavy tripod. Through it, he observes a slice of enemy territory not as a landscape, but as a grid of coordinates and a dataset of normalcy. He begins his day before dawn, noting the morning picture. He logs everything: where the shadows fall, the pattern of a damaged fence, the behavior of animals. He creates a meticulous map overlay, marking every suspected hiding place. Church belfry, a specific shell crater, a distinctive clump of bushes. His greatest skill is pattern recognition and anomaly detection. He is not looking for a man, he is looking for the single brick that is out of place, the one patch of frost that melted too quickly, hinting at body heat, the almost imperceptible gleam of a lens catching the low sun. He works in tandem with his sniper, whispering range adjustments and wind calls, but his primary role is detection. He represents the industrial, systematic American war machine applied to a tactical problem, the reduction of a skilled individual to a locatable, targetable coordinate. His victory is not a shot, but a positive identification. The duel between sniper and spotter did not occur in a vacuum. It was shaped by the brutal tactical environment of the late-war Western Front. As the Allied advance slowed, the front lines crystallized, towns were half-held, forests became no man's land, and fields were crisscrossed with mutually observed kill zones. This static, intimate warfare was the sniper's natural habitat. German defensive doctrine, honed by years of retreat, employed snipers as stoppers and delayers. They were positioned to cover obstacles, cover the retreat of their own forces, or simply to inflict a steady drip of casualties to drain Allied morale. The American tactical response evolved from frantic to methodical. Initially, the response to sniper fire was the reconnaissance by fire, emptying machine guns into likely hiding spots. This was wasteful and often ineffective. The introduction of systematic spotter teams changed the calculus. An area would be placed under sustained observation. Patrols might be used not to attack, but to deliberately draw fire, acting as bait to trigger the sniper's reveal. Once the spotter pinpointed the location, the response could be surgical: a single sniper round, a brief, accurate mortar strike, or the terrifying, building-shaking fire of a .50 caliber machine gun. The battlefield became a chessboard of observation posts and hidden positions, a slow, grinding war of attrition. Fought not for miles, but for yards of rubble and forest, the spotter team brought a measure of control back to this chaotic environment, turning a sector of the front from a place of random terror into a managed, if still deadly, space. These three angles, the artist, the scientist, and the lethal ecosystem they inhabited, define the core of the conflict. But to fully comprehend its impact, we must look deeper into the tools, the leadership, and the profound psychological war that underpinned every shot fired. At its heart, this was a war of lenses and light. The German advantage lay in the quality of their individual sniper scopes and their unparalleled expertise in Tarn und Tauschen, camouflage and deception. They used Zielfernrohr, telescopic sights like The 4XZF-39, known for its robust construction and excellent light transmission. Their camouflage smocks, the Labermuster or splinter-pattern Sumpfdarn, were advanced. For the time, designed to break up the human silhouette, they employed dummy positions, shooting strings to move vegetation from a distance, and even placed corpses in exposed locations to lure curious Allied soldiers into a kill zone. The American technological response was not to match them, but to overwhelm them with superior observation technology. The M49 spotting scope was in a different league than any handheld optic. Its 20x magnification and large objective lens gathered so much light that it could be used effectively in low-light conditions, negating the sniper's favored dawn and dusk windows. Furthermore, the U.S. employed another devastating tool, the stereoscopic rangefinder. Used by artillery units, these devices allowed spotters to take precise, triangulated measurements to a suspected position, converting a vague somewhere in that tree line into a specific map reference. This marriage of high-powered optics and precise surveying tools meant that the spotter could identify and locate a target with a level of accuracy the lone German sniper could not counter. His camouflage might fool the naked eye at 300 meters, but it could not fool the stereoscopic analysis of a terrain feature at 800 meters. The contrast in approaches reflected a deeper doctrinal chasm. German sniping, for all its sophistication, remained an elite individual skill. It relied on the prowess and initiative of the lone expert, a manifestation of Auftragstaktik. While there were schools and manuals, the sniper was ultimately a master of his own isolated domain. The American response, however, was quintessentially systematic. It was a top-down solution, implemented to solve an identified battlefield deficiency. Commanders like General George Patton, who initially derided defensive measures, came to recognize the sniper's impact and demanded solutions. The U.S. Army established makeshift sniper schools right in the European theater of operations, ETO, such as the one run by the 2nd Infantry Division. More importantly, they institutionalized the spotter-sniper team with infantry battalions. This was not left to chance or individual unit preference. It became a prescribed part of the table of organization and equipment. The U.S. invested in producing the tools, the M1CD Garans, the M49 scopes, and the training protocols on a scale Germany could no longer match. In 1944-45, the American system could lose a spotter or a sniper and replace him, retrain him. The German system, eroded by years of catastrophic losses, was losing its irreplaceable masters of the craft. The duel became one between a dwindling pool of gifted individuals and a replicable, scalable system of countermeasures. Beyond the physical casualties, this was a battle for the minds of the men in the line. The German sniper's primary weapon was terror, the fear of the unseen, the random, the personally targeted death. This terror had a corrosive effect on unit cohesion and offensive spirit. It made men hesitate. It made them keep their heads down. It bred a pervasive sense of helplessness. The introduction of effective U.S. spotter teams was as much a psychological operation as a tactical one. Their very presence was a morale booster. Word would spread through a company. We've got a spotter team on that church tower. They're watching the woods. This replaced amorphous fear with a sense of guarded security. When a German sniper did fire and was then swiftly, decisively eliminated by a counterstrike guided by a spotter, it was a powerful, tangible victory. It demonstrated that the Phantom could be killed, that the American soldier was not helpless. It restored a sense of agency and control. For the German sniper, the gradual realization that his hidden positions were being systematically found and destroyed must have been profoundly demoralizing. His cloak of invisibility was fraying. The psychological pendulum was swinging from the terror of being hunted to the confidence of being protected by unseen watchers of one's own. This shift in the emotional landscape of the frontline infantryman was perhaps the spotter team's most Significant, though least quantifiable, victory. With these angles explored, the human, the technical, the doctrinal, and the psychological, the stage is fully set for the climax of this hidden war. It would reach its peak intensity during the German army's last great gamble in the West, where the confidence of the hunter would collide with the cold, systematic processes of the new hunters. The climax of this silent war did not occur in a single famous battle, but across the frozen, fog-shrouded landscape of the Ardennes during the Battle of the Bulge. From December 16, 1944, onward, Hitler's massive counteroffensive threw the thinly held American lines into chaos for the German snipers attached to advance units of the 1st SS Panzer Division, 12th SS Panzer Division, and parachute regiments. It was a moment of supreme opportunity and perceived dominance. The Americans were retreating, confused and often isolated, the terrain of dense forests, deep valleys, and scattered farmsteads was perfect for their craft. They infiltrated ahead of the main spearheads, disguising themselves in captured American uniforms or white snow smocks, sowing discord and picking off leaders at road junctions and command posts. In the critical early days, they were devastatingly effective, amplifying the panic and dislocation. In the besieged town of Bastogne, snipers pinned down movement, making the resupply of frontline positions a deadly gamble. To the advancing German marksmen, it must have seemed like the ultimate validation of their skill, the untouchable ghost helping to unravel a mighty armies. The American response, initially fragmented in the retreat, quickly coalesced around strongpoints and towns, and it was in these defensive nodes that the U.S. spotter teams came into their own. With the front lines fluid, they could no longer rely on static, long-term observation posts. They adapted. Spotter teams were attached to key defensive battalions like those of the 101st Airborne in Bastogne or the 2nd and 99th Infantry divisions holding the northern shoulder of the Bulge. Their role became more dynamic and critical than ever. From the bell towers of churches in towns like St. Vith or from the upper floors of stout stone farmhouses, they established hasty but vital observation posts. Their job was to bring order to the chaos of the perimeter defense. They scanned the tree lines and fields of fire, not just for snipers, but for forming up infantry, for Panzerfaust teams, for mortar observers, but the German sniper, seeking to break the defense from within, remained priority target number one. One such engagement, typifying the turning point, occurred on the perimeter of Bastogne in the days just after Christmas. A German sniper, likely from the 5th Parachute Division, had entrenched himself in the shattered attic of a barn on the edge of a small village held by the 101st. For 2 days, he had dominated the main street, killing several men and preventing the movement of ammunition and wounded. Frustrated attempts to flush him out with machine gun fire had failed. The barn was a sturdy stone structure. A 2-man team from the division's nascent sniper detachment was called forward. The spotter, using an M49 scope, set up in a second-story window of a house diagonally opposite, about 400 yards away. He spent the morning watching. He noted the Germans' pattern, a shot every hour or so, usually at any sign of movement. The spotter saw no muzzle flash, no obvious firing port. Then, in the early afternoon, with the low sun at a different angle, he saw it, an almost imperceptible puff of vapor, like a faint breath of smoke emanating from a dark gap between 2 stones near the peak of the barn's gable. It was the venting of gases from the sniper's rifle, mixed with the condensation of his breath in the frigid air. He had pinpointed not the sniper, but the tiny, hidden aperture of his firing port. The spotter relayed the exact location to his partner, the sniper, who was armed with an M1903A4, but the angle was poor and the stone offered protection. The spotter then called back to the company command post. His report was not a request for a general barrage, but a specific fire mission for a single .50 caliber M2 machine gun section. He gave precise adjustments. Target is the barn at grid coordinate. Focus fire 6 inches. left and 18 inches below the dark vertical crack in the stonework, near the roofline. The .50 cal team, understanding the call was from a spotter, trusted the coordinates. The heavy, throaty roar of the Browning split the air, armor-piercing. Incendiaries, each round the size of a man's thumb, walked across the face of the barn, and then converged on the specified point. They did not just impact, they chewed through the old stone and timber in a torrent of dust and splinters. The shooting from the barn stopped permanently. The phantom had been materialized, targeted, and destroyed with engineering precision. This micro-engagement, repeated in variations along the bulge's perimeter, symbolized the turning of the tide in the counter-sniper war. The individual artist had been outmatched by the network system. The German offensive began to stall, starved of fuel and hammered by clearing weather and Allied air power, as the initiative shifted back to the Americans in early January 1945. The role of the spotter teams evolved once more. They became the spearhead of the clearing operations, the essential tool for reducing the myriad of German rearguards left behind to delay the Allied countradvance. With the failure of the Ardennes offensive, the German army in the west was broken, conducting a fighting retreat back towards the Rhine. This phase, from January to March 1945, became a brutal war of attrition in every village, every forest, and every crossroads for the remaining German snipers, many now young Hitler youth or fanatical Volkssturm militiamen with minimal training. Their mission was purely sacrificial. To delay, to inflict cost, to die in place. They occupied church steeples, factory ruins, and prepared positions in cellars with mousehole firing ports. Their skill level was often lower, but their desperation made them unpredictable and sometimes more reckless. For the advancing U.S. infantry, every built-up area was a potential death trap. The systematic methodology of the spotter teams now became the standard operating procedure for clearing towns. The process was methodical and relentless. As a battalion approached a village, spotter teams would be sent forward with reconnaissance elements or would establish hasty ops on high ground overlooking the objective. They would spend hours, sometimes a full day, conducting a detailed reconnaissance by sight. They would map every potential strongpoint, the tallest building, the church, the railway station, houses with clear fields of fire down main streets. They looked for the telltale signs, boarded up windows with a single loose board, a firing port, piles of furniture arranged for defense, the absence of civilian movement. Once the assault began, the spotter teams did not lead the charge. They operated in support, often from a secure position a few hundred meters back, as infantry squads worked their way through the outskirts. The spotter's job was to watch the untouched depths of the town to cover the advance. When a German sniper or machine gun nest opened fire, pinning down a platoon, the spotter team went to work. Their elevated panoramic view allowed them to see what the men in the street could not, where the fire was coming from and often where it could go next. A classic scenario: a squad is pinned in a courtyard by fire from a distant house. The men on the ground see only a blank wall of buildings. The spotter, from his op, sees a faint muzzle flash from a second-story window of a specific house, 3 buildings down the line. He immediately relays this via radio. Baker Company, this is Watchtower. Fire is from White House with red shutters, second window from north. Confirm. A tank or a mortar section is then directed to engage that specific window, not the entire block. This capability transformed urban combat. It reduced the fog of war at the micro tactical level. Commanders now had eyes that could see over and through the urban maze. The spotter team became the critical link between the infantryman trapped in the street and the supporting arms that could save him. They enabled a precision that saved both American lives and, incidentally, the structures of towns that did not need to be pulverized by indiscriminate artillery to silence a single sniper. The German delaying tactic, reliant on hidden defenders, was being systematically neutralized by observation and coordinated fire. The climax of this entire campaign of countersniping can be seen in the final push. Across Germany, in towns like Aachen, Cologne, and countless others, the pattern repeated. The confident, veteran German sniper of 1944 was largely gone, replaced by desperate defender. The U.S. spotter team, however, was now a battle-hardened, integral part of the infantry battalion's toolkit. Their techniques were refined, their technology proven, their reputation cemented. The psychological advantage had irrevocably shifted. The American GI, while still fearful, now knew there was a system in place to protect him from the unseen shot. The German defender, hiding in his ruin, could no longer assume his position was secret. He had to contend with the unnerving possibility that for hours he had been watched through a powerful lens, his position already plotted on a map, and his fate awaiting only the order to fire. The Untouchable had been made profoundly vulnerable, not by a better sniper, but by a better way of seeing. The hidden front had been illuminated, and with that light the ghost was banished. The relentless advance to the Rhine and beyond marked the operational end of the German sniper threat as a widespread, campaign-altering factor. The systematic American approach had broken its back. Now, the full consequences of this hidden duel in statistics, in doctrine, and in the enduring psyche of the soldier would come into sharp focus. The immediate, tangible aftermath of the counter-sniper campaign was written in the grim statistics of the war's final months and in the changed face of frontline tactics. While precise numbers of German snipers killed by specific U.S. spotter actions are impossible to isolate, the overall casualty ratios and after-action reports tell a clear story. In the Huachen forest and early Bulge fighting, sniper casualties were a major contributor to U.S. losses, sometimes accounting for a third of a company's wounds and deaths in a given day. By the time of the Rhine crossings in March 1945, while snipers were still a hazard, they were no longer described as a crippling one in unit journals. The fear remained, but the paralysis did not. U.S. losses from small arms fire, while still heavy, were increasingly attributed to organized machine gun and mortar positions, rather than the lone, elusive marksman. The U.S. Army itself underwent a rapid institutional learning process. The improvised sniper and spotter schools established in theater, like those of the 2nd, 5th, and 101st Divisions, formalized the hard-won lessons. Training memos circulated, emphasizing the team concept, the spotter as the primary observer and the sniper as the primary shooter. The M1C and M1D Garand sniper variants saw increased issuance, though the trusty M1903A4 remained in use until the end. Crucially, the value of the M49 spotting scope was unequivocally proven. Its procurement and distribution were prioritized, and its use was integrated into infantry battalion standard operating procedures. The after-action report of the 78th Infantry Division from April 1945 stated plainly, the use of sniper spotter teams with high-powered telescopes has been the single most effective countermeasure against enemy snipers and observers. Their ability to pinpoint and silence such positions has saved innumerable lives and prevented countless delays. For the German sniper, the aftermath was one of annihilation and eroding quality. The master snipers of the Eastern Front and Normandy were mostly dead, captured, or wounded. Their replacements, drawn from the last reserves of the Reich, lacked the years of training and fieldcraft. Many were instructed only in the basics of the rifle and, given a simple order, take a position and fight to the end. This resulted in a tragic, futile sacrifice. Interrogations of captured German soldiers in 1945 revealed that sniper morale was catastrophically low. They spoke of the terrifying accuracy of American counterfire, believing the Americans had some kind of sniper radar or fantastically numerous super snipers. They did not understand the system of dedicated observation. They only knew that their carefully chosen hides were being struck with devastating precision. Shortly after they revealed themselves, the myth of the untouchable sharpshooter, so carefully cultivated, had been shattered by systematic technological warfare. The physical landscape of Germany bore witness to this shift in methodology. Towns, cleared by infantry working in concert with spotter teams, often showed a different pattern of destruction than those reduced by area bombardment. Instead of entire blocks leveled, one might see a single, surgically damaged church tower or a specific house with its upper floor meticulously chewed apart by .50 caliber fire, while the structures around it remained largely intact. This was the signature of the spotter. Directed engagement, violence applied with discriminate precision. It was a harbinger of a future style of warfare, though few at the time would have recognized it as such. The battle had moved from a contest of hiding to a contest of finding, and the finders had won. The consequences of this duel extended far beyond the battlefield of 1945, shaping the very DNA of modern infantry and special operations forces. The most profound legacy was the institutionalization of the sniper-spotter team as the fundamental unit of long-range precision engagement. The U.S. military, which entered World War II with no sniper doctrine, emerged from it with a proven, battle-tested template. This template was refined in Korea, revolutionized in Vietnam with the introduction of night vision and laser rangefinders, and brought to its apex in the late 20th and 21st centuries. The modern U.S. military sniper team, with its ballistic computers, laser designators, and digital comms, is the direct descendant of those two-man teams in the Ardennes. The spotter remains the team leader, the brains of the operation, the one who manages the data field and makes the critical observations. The core lesson of World War II, that the observer is as important as the shooter, became engraved in doctrine. Technologically, the conflict spurred a permanent arms race in optics and surveillance. The advantage granted by the M49 spotting scope made clear that whoever owned the best eyes owned the battlefield. This drove relentless post-war innovation. Starlight scopes, thermal imaging, unmanned aerial observation, from drones to satellites, and today's fused sensor suites. The goal remained the same as it was for that spotter. Bastogne, to see the enemy without being seen, to detect the anomaly, to remove the cloak of invisibility. The German sniper's nightmare of being watched by an unseen eye has become the reality of 21st century warfare, where persistent surveillance from multiple platforms is a foundational capability. On a human level, the psychological dynamic established in that war endures. The sniper remains a figure of unique dread on the battlefield, a fear drilled into every infantry recruit, but counter-sniper tactics, now a staple of modern combat training, provide the antidote. Not blind panic, but a series of disciplined responses. Soldiers are taught immediate action drills, how to use cover and concealment to limit exposure, and to trust in their own supporting assets, the modern equivalents of the spotter team. The terror of the invisible shot has been compartmentalized into a manageable threat. Known hazard to be mitigated by technology, training, and teamwork. This shift from helplessness to procedural response is one of the most important, if unheralded, psychological victories in modern infantry combat. Finally, the duel redefined the value of the individual in industrial war. The German sniper represented the pinnacle of the individual warrior, highly skilled, self-reliant, and lethal. The U.S. spotter team represented the system, a replicable, scalable combination of technology, procedure, and teamwork. In the end, the system prevailed. It did not necessarily produce a better individual marksman than the best German veteran, but it produced a reliable capability that could be deployed across an entire army, that could sustain losses and continue, and that could integrate seamlessly with other combat arms. This lesson, that systematized expertise triumphs over isolated genius in a protracted total war, became a cornerstone of post-war American military philosophy. The unseen front of World War II proved that on the modern battlefield, the most dangerous weapon is not the sharpest eye, but the clearest picture shared by all. The echoes of those solitary rifle cracks and the patient, silent watches in frozen observation posts have faded into history, but their legacy is written in every modern military manual, in the design of every advanced sighting system, and in the unspoken understanding between every sniper and spotter who today scans a distant ridge. Continuing the eternal hunt. The forest is quiet now. The frozen foxholes of the Ardennes have long since softened. Back into the earth, the shattered barns and church towers were rebuilt decades ago. The war moved on in geography and in technology to other forests, other cities, other forms of unseen threats. Yet, the silent duel between the German sniper and the American spotter team endures as a profound parable of modern conflict. It was a clash of two worldviews. On one side, the artist of war, believing in the supremacy of individual skill, patience, and the psychological power of terror. His was a craft of isolation and intimacy, where each shot was a personal signature. On the other, the scientist of war, employing system, technology, and shared observation to demystify the battlefield. His was a craft of integration and analysis, where each identified target was a data point in a larger tactical picture. The spotter's victory was not the triumph of one man over another, it was the triumph of a methodology. It demonstrated that in the age of industrial-scale warfare, the most potent force is not the singular genius, but the effective system, a system that could see, process, and act with calibrated precision. It marked a moment where warfare began its slow, inexorable shift from the realm of instinct and art towards the realm of information and science. But to view this only as a technological or tactical evolution is to miss its human core. At its heart, this story is about the conquest of fear. The spotter, with his lens and his logbook, gave the infantryman a shield against the terror of the random and unseen. He replaced mystery with knowledge, helplessness with agency. He proved that even the most ghostly of foes could be made tangible and therefore could be fought. In the end, the greatest weapon developed in that frozen forest was not a better scope or a new drill, but the restoration of a soldier's courage, forged not in blind bravery, but in the confident light of being seen, protected, and avenged by his own unseen watchers.